Loved ones, you and I are in Management 3130. This is session 3. If we're meeting face-to-face, it would be 24 June. The only admin thing that I want to share with you is, again, I don't know when you're going to view this video, but 24 June is the last day for drop ad for the B term for summer school. So today will be a discussion about Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is a chapter on management theory, and I want to sort of develop a foundation before we start talking about the stuff that's in the chapter. So the first thing I would share with you, since I can't ask you these questions, I hate it. I also hate sitting when I teach. I've been doing this for 28 years and I haven't ever before sat for an entire class. But the camera's field of view is relatively narrow, so I have to be sensitive to my presentation and also what I put on a whiteboard or the use of a projector, whatever the case may be. So the film crew didn't show up today. The hair and makeup people did, but the filming guys, they were doing drugs somewhere. They're all Hollywood people. I want to give you a definition of theory. Again, I would ask you this if we were together, but and I understand if I asked you to go to Google Scholar and do a search, come up with a definition of theory, you would probably get 4.9 million hits in about a tenth of a second. So there are a lot of competing definitions, but the classic definition of theory would be a formal argument that proposes relationships among variables. And I'm going to put 2 on the board that I think will at least bring this definition to life. So I just need a second. So this is the Bill Norton theory of juvenile delinquency. I'm not a social psychologist. I have no background or foundation, but I've been a dad for 30-something years. So here's my theory of juvenile delinquency. I'm going to put this stuff up here in a way that I hope is legible, but I'll make sure that you know precisely what I mean. So, my theory of juvenile delinquency has 4 variables. This is the kid. The kid is a dependent measure. This is the juvenile, the person who's an adolescent child. This is the juvenile in the middle. This is a dependent variable because we have 2 independent variables, peers and family. We have 2 independent variables that are literally impacting this dependent measure. And the outcome is behavior. It's juvenile delinquency. So, in my theory of juvenile delinquency, and again, I have no credentials, I just want to show you that a theory is a formal argument. It proposes relationships among variables. I would argue that if peer influence is high and family influence is low, I would argue that the possibility for juvenile delinquency is enhanced. If peer influence is high, family influence is low, I would expect the kid to engage in behaviors that are not virtuous. And if you turn that around, my second hypothesis would be if peer influence is low and family influence is high, juvenile delinquency would decline. Again, I don't know that that's true, but what I put on the board is a theory. It is a formal argument that proposes relationships among variables. Now, all theories have to be testable, don't they? So, if I were a social psychologist studying these phenomena, I would get subjects, adolescent children. I would get measures of peer influence and family influence. I would get measures of their behaviors, and I would have data. And I could analyze the data and then interpret them and find out what it means. So my theory could either be confirmed, it could essentially suggest that these relationships predict that behavior, or it could be invalidated. I might gather data and find out that there's no relationship whatsoever. As long as you get the fact that a theory, definitionally, is a formal argument that proposes relationships among variables, and that it should be testable, then you have the central feature. Excuse me. And beyond that, I would say that each of us, you and I, each of us has hundreds of implicit theories. Do we have a theory on what makes a good prom date? Or what might make a good mate? If I were looking for mates, I can promise you most of you would look at parts and personality and prospects. Is this person attractive to me? You and you alone get to decide what attractive is. Do I like the personality? Is this person upbeat, warm, patient, kind, or is she or he a complete butthole? How about prospects? Ladies, if you look at a man who looks cute in blue jeans and all he wants to do is sit around the pool and drink beer, oh dear, do you want to raise another child? I'm not saying everybody has to be a rocket scientist or a physician, but what about prospects? Is this person going to be employable? Will she or he contribute to the support and the growth and development of our family unit? So again, I don't know, but I promise you, every one of you has some sort of an implicit theory about what these variables are and how they wiggle, how they interact. So again, a theory definitionally is a formal argument that proposes relationships among variables, and all theories have to be tested. So I want to, I'm going to lose the theory thing on the board because I have to tell you a story. This is big stuff. This is really exciting. I made a discovery and I'm not sure what to do with it. So if you've known me for more than 7 or 8 seconds, you would know that I'm a man who values the private ownership of firearms. And that is a good thing. So a few months ago, I was invited out to Black Creek, Georgia to take a factory tour. Daniel Defense is a company that's about 20 years old now. I think they were founded in the year 2000. And it's reached the point where, in terms of volume, it is the second largest manufacturer of AR-15s in the world. The only company that makes more is Fabrique Nationale. That's a Belgian company that has an American subsidiary. And the reason that they have a presence in America is they have the contract to make the M4s for the US military. So Daniel Defense is a premier manufacturer of AR-15s. And a few months ago, maybe even a year ago now, they opened up a new facility, a manufacturing facility, state-of-the-art, 300,000 square feet, just remarkable. And these are my people. So I got an invitation to do a factory tour, and I said, heck yes, because I never swear. Forgive me. So here's what I discovered on that factory tour. This is I-16 East. I'm headed towards Savannah. And I left that equipment. I'm going to go in a different direction. My goodness. This is I-16 East. This is Highway 280 North. And then this is simply an industrial drive. This is an access road that was in the industrial park. So it may be a mile or so. So I go down this industrial drive, and the Daniel Defense facility is there and it's magnificent. And I don't think I blinked for an hour and 45 minutes. I didn't want to miss anything. So I have this factory tour of the new manufacturing facility for Daniel Defense. On my way home, I was coming back to college, back to campus. So I go back out this thing and I discover that there's a building here, and I didn't pay attention to this going in. The signage wasn't really clear for the street. But this is the Southeastern Distribution Center for Bluebell ice cream. Y'all, that is the best ice cream east of Texas. And that was a neat discovery. So I'm leaving Daniel Defense, I'm headed back to the interstate, and I discovered that the Bluebell Southeastern Distribution Center was here. So here's the discovery. I think this is path-breaking, but I don't know where to report it. There's got to be some journal. I'm pretty sure that little dot right there is the center of the universe. You got Daniel Defense on one side, Bluebell on the other. Right there, loved ones. Center of the universe. But I don't know who to tell. There's got to be some journal I can publish that in. But I wanted you to know that this is really important. I mean, I'm just a standard, ordinary organizational scientist, and I discovered the center of the universe. And now you know where it is too. Pretty darn cool. Let's get back to management. In the early part of this chapter is entitled Management Theory. That is why I wanted to share that with you definitionally. Excuse me. The textbook literally presents a bunch of management theories, and they are not unimportant. But interestingly, it groups them into two broad categories. It says first, and I think I'm on page 47 in the text, it says first, there are a number of theories that are historical. And those theories probably went from as early as we started studying organizational sciences through the 1950s. So to some degree, they are dated. Now, the fact that something is old doesn't mean it's irrelevant. Parts of the Bible are 4,500 years old, and we still see a lot of value there. So this set of theories that the authors call historical probably started, again, in the early 19th century and went through the 1950. Then they talk about contemporary theories, which tend to be behavioral. Instead of studying things that are mechanistic, how do we get more work out of people? We're studying behaviors and trying to understand that. And these contemporary theories began, they started to emanate in the 60s, 1960, and they go, of course, to the present day. Now, each of these perspectives, the historical perspective and the contemporary perspective, has three major theories in it. And the textbook talks about them in meaningful ways. And as I was preparing for class, I realized that, in my view, I could not add any value. I would just be regurgitating what's on a few pages in the textbook. I think it's enormously important for you to read it because that establishes a context. Where have we come from? So I want you to drill down, read this material. But again, I don't see any value in me talking with you about it as I make this presentation. There is one that I want to pull out of there because it impacts what you will likely do for the rest of your lives. There's a German sociologist named Max Weber. We would call it Weber, but the Germans don't pronounce W's the way we do. Max Weber, German sociologist. He actually did his research and his prolific writing in the 19th century, like 1880, 1890, something like that. But his works were not translated into English until 1947, so we've only known about it for about 70 years or so. We, English speakers, have only known about it. So Weber literally said, I believe that there is an organizational form that is superior to all others. A tribe is an organizational form, isn't it? Would you agree? A club where everybody joins voluntarily. There are a lot of the military is an organizational form. So Weber said, I believe that there's a form of organization that is superior to all others, and he called it a bureaucracy. And the truth is that we sometimes say things are bureaucratic, and we don't mean that to be kind, but the reality is virtually every organization, certainly in this country, I don't know what things are like in New Jersey or other foreign nations, but certainly in this country, almost all of us work for organizations that follow this bureaucratic model of organization. In fact, I thought through this as I was preparing the lecture notes. I can only think of two career paths that you could take that you would not be embedded in an organization. If you were either a poet or a sniper, you're going to work alone. But all the rest of us are going to be in organizations. And it doesn't matter if we're HVAC people, if we're aviation people like pilots or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter if we're in business or nonprofits or government. We're all embedded in organizations. So we have to be sensitive to organizational forms. Now, the thing that made me want to develop Weber's theory of a bureaucracy is twofold. One, we're all going to be embedded in them in our careers. And I want you to understand the virtues. Weber says that a bureaucracy has 5 features. There are 5 distinct attributes that any firm that's organized as a bureaucracy would exhibit. The first thing he says is that there is a hierarchy of authority. And what he's talking about explicitly would be reporting relationships. To whom do we report? Who gets to make decisions? For example, if you look at me, I'm a faculty member that's part of the management department here at the Parker College. So in my hierarchy of authority, I report to the chairman of the department, who reports to the dean, who reports to the provost, because the provost is the chief academic officer of the university. The provost reports to the president to the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents ultimately is accountable to the legislature. So my point is, I'm just telling you something that you realize. You and I could be working on a team at Taco Bell, couldn't we? But there'll be a hierarchy. There'll be people who have decision-making authority. There'll be some kind of reporting structure. To whom do I report? Who has authority over me? So the first thing Weber talks about is this hierarchy of authority. The second thing that he talks about, pretty big deal, he says that a bureaucracy would have formal rules and procedures. And when he says formal, I don't remember, though I've read his work in English, I'm almost certain he makes it explicit that they're codified, that they're written down. If we have knowledge but it's not written down, that is tacit knowledge. You might know how to ride a bike. Have you written that down so that your younger siblings could read that and know how to ride a bike? So tacit knowledge is knowledge that's not articulate, it's not codified. We possess it, but it's not written down anywhere. So his argument in a bureaucracy is that there are formal rules and procedures. There's specific guidance on the way we do things. Now, if you think about that, in the absence of formal rules and procedures, what we would have is anarchy. That is exactly the way Zappos is organized. I think the guy at Zappos is a fruitcake, and that's the family version, yes. I've been in Zappos stores, and I think the guy's nuts. The guy, the CEO, because he put in some place, some organizational structure where you sort of show up and you decide what your job is. You don't have anybody doing your report. Nobody says, here are your responsibilities, here are your resources. You just sort of figure it out yourself. And he, the CEO at Zappos, thinks he is all that in a bag of Doritos. And somehow he misses the fact that his employee turnover is about 25 or 30% per year. Because people show up and think, I don't have any idea what I'm supposed to do. I don't know who exists as a resource for me. I don't know what the boundaries are. So the Zappo guys thinks he's cool, but I would point out, as I have before, the correct spelling of cool is F-O-O-L. Yes, if you think you're cool, indeed you are a fool. Now, the third thing that Weber talks about, he talks about division of labor. And what he means explicitly, he says this in his works. He says that when I talk about division of labor, he's talking about specialization based on skills. Gee, how easy is that? If I'm an airline pilot, I have to have a significant amount of formal training and a lot of time in the cockpit and simulators and rigorous examination because I have to have a particular skill set to safely fly a commercial airliner. Think about me as a college professor. I'm in the management department. I'm certainly competent at what I do. I have a lot of domain knowledge. How about if you took Bill Norton and pushed him across that little swamp bridge into the College of Science and Math and had me teach chemistry? Pardon me? I would be one chapter ahead of my kids. I know spit about chemistry, nothing. Physicians. We have here in town, there's a big network of physicians who are primarily surgeons who deal with skeletal issues primarily. And it's I think Optum may actually be based in Chicago or somewhere like that. But Optum has a major facility in Savannah, and they also own a hospital in Reidsville, and they have a presence here in the borough. And in the Savannah office, if memory serves, there are 35 or 40 surgeons, and they're all specialized. The guy that works on ankles doesn't work on spines. The guy that works on wrists and hands doesn't do knee surgeries. I'm not saying you have to over-specialize, but the point is, if I needed open heart surgery, for the sake of discussion, or anything like a cardiac intervention, I would want a cardiovascular surgeon who's done that procedure 10 or 12 times every Wednesday. I don't want a guy that's done it twice in the last year. I want somebody with familiarity, somebody with great experience in that domain, someone who has a legitimate knowledge base. So what Weber talks about is he said in this prototypically excellent organizational form called a bureaucracy, there is a division of labor based on skills, based on specialization, and that is well. The fourth thing he talks about is something that sadly oftentimes is not true. His argument is in this prototypically excellent form, an excellent bureaucracy, there should be absolutely zero nepotism, there should be zero favoritism. I shouldn't be able to hire you and promote you because you're family, or because you're a good friend, or because we were in the same fraternity, or other stupid stuff like that. So his argument is there should neither be nepotism nor favoritism in a bureaucracy. And that takes us to the fifth and final point as he lays out the structure of a bureaucracy. And that is, he says that all careers, all progression should be based on merit. Gosh, imagine that. Can I do the job? Can you do the job? Well, if we're not competent, we need more experience, more training, more education. But his argument is that all careers and all progression should be based on merit. I shouldn't be promoted because I'm devastatingly handsome. Pardon me. You know, I'm being ridiculous. That is such a big deal. Basing decisions, career progression decisions on merit. That should always be true, but often is not. So, Weber, in this perspective that he takes on organizational form, argues that a bureaucracy is sort of a prototypically excellent structure, form for any organization, and I really agree with him. The dilemma is, oftentimes in organizations, we do not competently enact those 5 attributes. We come up short. We don't base careers on merit. We do hire family members. Now, if you want to hire a family member and that person meets the criteria, that's different. But if somebody is hired just because they're friends or family or something like that, dead wrong. And I agree. Now, I'm on page 56 right now in the text. I didn't want to say something, and I don't think that what I'm about to say is path-breaking, but as I read this passage, it just annoyed the crap out of me. Please forgive my bad language. The authors, who apparently, I don't know, I'm guessing that they wear Birkenstocks with oatmeal socks. I don't know. The authors briefly talk about, on page 56, the Battle of Britain. And they make an assertion which is absolutely meritless. They say that the Battle of Britain was won using statistics and mathematics. Oh, really? Is there any evidence that any of those pilots who were flying for the Royal Air Force in Hawker Hurricanes and Supermarine Spitfires, did they have like stats and math in the cockpits with them? Pretty sure they did. It is inarguable. I mean, history is pretty clear in this respect. The Battle of Britain was won because of the tenacity, the skill, the fierce courage that those pilots had, and Britain had coastal radar. It had radar installations on the coast, on the English Channel, so it could pick up incoming aircraft. And the radar monitors would permit the operator to know the altitude, 12,000, 14,000, whatever the altitude of this incoming flight was, and the number of planes in the formation. So the RAF, the Royal Air Force, could take its very limited resources, planes and pilots, and allocate them to meet that threat. The Battle of Britain had not a darn thing to do with stats or math. It was won by fiercely independent, capable, courageous pilots and coastal radar that told them where to go. So again, I realize that that didn't change your life, but when I see things that are stupid, I have to call them out, and I hope you do too. Hope that's how you go through life. So now, I'm on 59-ish, I guess. I'm hoping that my notes are correct, my lecture notes. And this particular section of the textbook talks about systems. And systems are typically, there are closed systems. The cooling system in your car or truck is a closed system. There's a radiator that holds the coolant. There's some kind of a water pump, and there are pulleys and belts, and that water pump circulates the coolant through the engine, and it goes back to the radiator where it's cooled, and then it goes back to the engine. That's a closed system. But in organizations, virtually everything in an organization is an open system. And when we talk about these things that are interrelated, what the authors talk about, and certainly if they do it well, they say that a system essentially has 4 parts. Inputs, the process of transformation, outputs, and feedback. Think about your degree here at the Parker College. The truth is, you are both the inputs and the outputs. You show up as freshmen, big hearts, kind of excited to be here, wanting to accomplish something, wanting to equip yourself with skills that make you employable, that mean that you will live an independent life with dignity and discretionary income. So you're the inputs. Literally, incoming freshmen are the inputs in any university system. The transformation process is what we're doing right now. Learning, yes, imagine that. We're introducing you to technical skills. We're introducing you to cognitive skills, how you approach problem solving, how you think. We introduce interpersonal skills, how to resolve conflict, how to negotiate, how to communicate. So if you look at this big bundle of things that we do here in the Parker College, technical skills, cognitive skills, interpersonal skills, and much more, much more. But the point is, your education here is the process of transformation, and then you will walk across the stage at some point, and you'll leave this university, and you go do neat, important stuff. You're the outputs. So literally, incoming students are the inputs in this systems theory. The process of education is the process of transformation, what you learn and how you learn it. And then when you leave, you're the outputs. Do we get feedback? Heck yeah. Do we talk with you when you're alums? Indeed we do. Now sometimes you give money to the college and the dean loves that. That's not my perspective. But I want to talk to you to know if you left here well equipped. And I promise you, our employers tell us that. They say your kids are just the best. They come up short nowhere. And yet I had a kid who graduated, I guess it might have been a year ago, December. He took a fabulous job with Home Depot as a financial analyst, not working in the store, but working in the corporate headquarters. His starting salary was in the middle 50s, just a great, great success story. And we talk often. I had him probably 3 times because he did the entrepreneurship and innovation emphasis inside of management. And that's, I'm central to that process here. I teach a lot in that program. So I had Ben 3 times over the course of a couple of years, got to know him well, think highly of him. And he said to me, once he gets up to, Atlanta, corporate offices of Home Depot, he said, I can't believe how weak I am in Excel. He said, if I'd known how much businesses use that spreadsheet, I would have mastered it. So he did an awful lot of self-learning and reach out to colleagues and coworkers and stuff. But the point is that we get feedback. The employers tell us that you're well prepared or not. Our students tell us what their own experiences are. I actually talked to a recruiter once for a very big company. They make excavation equipment. It wasn't Caterpillar, but it's in that industry. And I said, well, gosh, you're in a place where there's another university that has an AACSB accredited school. Why don't you hire from there? And her words to me resonate to this day. I will never forget her exact words. She said, we don't even, if we get their resumes from that school, we shred them because they are, open quotes, long on attitude, short on skills, close quotes. Would you ever want anybody to describe you that way? Can't do the job, but you have a bad attitude? Long on attitude, short on skills. So, systems theory as it applies to us. Inputs, that's 1. The process of transformation is 2. The outputs, 3. The feedback, 4. And again, using your degree is, I think, a pretty good way of sort of bringing it to life. So now, the last thing I want to talk about, sort of conceptually, the last major topic, is I want to talk about quality. And I knew that I would need a whiteboard for this class. There are some classes I'll teach in other facilities. I've taught on my deck, I've taught on a rifle range. I taught on the CIA safe house once last spring. We might have a training exercise this summer, I don't know. We'll figure that out. But I want to talk about quality, and I knew that I would need a whiteboard. I knew I needed to talk to you about theories. I knew I would needed to talk to you about this quality initiative. So let me get the whiteboard clean, and I will come back to quality. Y'all got the center of the universe thing, right? Yes? So, the text gives us an innocent, wonderful, simple, direct definition of quality. It says quality is when we reduce variation in either the process, the transformation process, or the outcomes. whatever it is that we do, services, products, whatever the case may be. If we reduce variability in either the process or the outcomes, then we are moving towards quality. And the reality is, quality is measurable. It's measurable everywhere. It's measurable in my teaching. It's measurable in people who prepare tax returns. It's measurable if you buy a new automobile. There's almost nothing that escapes metrics that grab quality, the original measures that grab quality. For example, if I'm a car company, let's just make this up. Let's assume that we outsource the transmissions for a particular line of vehicles, and we have all kinds of failures. Oh my goodness, don't we have to pay for them under warranty? Indeed. So are we going to do something with that vendor? Heck yes. We'll change vendors. We'll insist that they do a better job. We'll make it right for our customers. But my point is, this thing about reducing variability, if we put somebody else's transmissions in our vehicles and they regularly fail, oh dear, that's a bad hit to quality, isn't it? So there's almost anything is measurable from the perspective of quality. So definitionally, quality is when we reduce variability, whether it's a process or whether it's an outcome or a product. And I would say to you, because this in large part comes from my time in industry, it also comes from my time studying businesses for, I guess, close to 30 years now. I am convinced that quality is free. If you look at my example, if we could just go back to that example of the car company that was putting someone else's transmissions in, what if it costs us, the company, $2,500 to repair or replace any customer's transmission that fails under warranty? We pay the dealers $2,500. We ship them parts and pay their techs and whatever else. So it costs us $2,500 per failure. What if, for the sake of discussion, we either had that vendor, that subcontractor, improve the quality of the transmissions that we're buying, or we chose someone else? And instead of having 20 out of 1,000 fail, we have 1 out of 10,000 fail. Okay, so 20 out of 1,000 times $2,500 versus 1 out of 10,000. Quality is free. If you and I build quality into what we do, whether it's a service or a product or process, it doesn't matter. If we build quality, we don't incur these costs that it takes to cure problems that arise. What if I'm a CPA here in the borough and I don't give a crap about quality and I do a bad job on tax returns? That means that my clients are going to be pretty upset when they get notices from the IRS that says you owe money for taxes and penalties and interest, and they're going to be banging on my door expecting me to make it better. Oh dear. Quality is free because it reduces these costs that we suffer for not building quality in everything we do, and I'm really serious about that. And I would also say, and this is an observation, but there's a lot of support for it, I would also say that, in my view, it is essential that whatever you do, product or process, whatever you do, your quality has to be equal to or better than others in your industry. And if you choose not to do that, if you don't say we're going to be equal to or better than everyone in our industry on the quality metrics, what that means is customers will choose somebody else. Why would I buy your car if there's all kinds of data out there that there are mechanical failures? I'll buy somebody else's car that doesn't have those failures. So the point is, if you don't meet or exceed the quality measures of others in your industry, people will not buy your stuff. So what I said, I think, is legitimate. Quality is free, and it's also essential. You cannot compete. You cannot compete if you don't really focus, even obsess about quality in everything: design, materials, the manufacturer or delivery of service, whatever it is that you do. Now, I want to show you something that I saw when I was an MBA student. That was actually quite a while ago. I think it was right after the Revolutionary War, I think, but I don't remember exactly. I was an MBA student. I was at Kennesaw State because I was living and working in Atlanta. We were the fighting owls, and I wanted to point out that owls don't fight. Oh, they're predators, they're raptors, but they don't fight. The fighting owls, stop it. So I'm in an MBA course, and we had a webinar. Even back then, there was electricity and monitors and stuff like that. We had a webinar by a man whose last name is Duran, not the singer, not Duran Duran, but a really bright quality guy whose last name is Duran. I don't remember his first name, and I didn't take the time to look it up for this presentation. So Duran is an incredibly well-regarded guy in this domain of quality. And he simply described quality as fitness for use, and I kind of get that. But he did this demonstration on the whiteboard, and again, I'm in a classroom like you are. Well, actually you're not. I was sitting in a classroom, and this was a webinar presentation. So I want to put what he put on the whiteboard up on that whiteboard. Won't take me long. We're going to compare quality measures for two organizations. So, what I'm putting on the whiteboard is a graph. The vertical axis is any measure of quality, and the horizontal axis would be measures of time. So, there were two organizations that we looked at. We'll call this company A, and here's kind of how it rolled out. And here's company B. So we have two organizations. Company A is the top line, Company B is the bottom line. These are measures of quality across time. And you can see that at some point they converge. So here's time one, here's T1. Let's assume for the sake of discussion that Company A and Company B make products that you consider to be identical. Let me give you an example. You're grocery shopping, and I'm making this up. Company A is Coke and Company B is Pepsi. I don't care if you have preferences, I get that. They are substantially identical products. They are carbonated soft drinks. So in your view, you'll pay the same amount of money, you're buying a substantially identical product, but in your view, the quality of Company A is measurably better, provably much higher, it scores way higher on the scale than Company B. So it's likely at T1 that you're going to literally say, okay, based on those quality measures, I'm gonna buy the A product. So now, let's go out here to T2. And here's what you see. You see that the quality for Company A is slowly but persistently getting better. They're making an effort. This company, organization is making an effort to continually improve quality. The Japanese even call that continuous improvement. It's one of their big industrial things. So, you're out here at T2. Company B is flat, no change. Company A has made some measurable increase. You're going to buy the same product. These are competing products, same price, they do the same thing. And you look at this and you think, well, gosh, why would I buy these guys when the other company's product has much higher quality? So that's kind of an easy buy. But at T2, this organization B says something like, golly gee, we're getting whipped in the market. We have got to dramatically improve the quality measures in the stuff that we make. So at T2, there's still a significant spread in the quality measures, but this second organization decides it's going to make a big, big change. Now, I'm going to change this upper thing. Yeah, that's better. So now we're out here at T3. This is another point in time. The quality measures on Company B, in this span between T2 and T3, have dramatically improved. So you're making a buy decision. Competing products, same price, they do essentially the same thing. It could be men's shirts, it could be a tablet, I don't really care. But you're looking at products that are direct competitors, they suffer the same price, and now Company A, or Organization A, has been chugging along, still making these persistent improvements in quality, but they're incremental. Organization B has ratcheted it up, and at this point in time, at T3, the quality measures are identical. There's no difference. Nothing separates them. So, you're back in the market, you're going to buy stuff, it's T3. Are you going to buy Company A or Company B's product? Now, I will tell you my bias, and this is just because I'm an old piece of dirt. In fact, there are trees that are younger than I am. Dirt is not quite as old as I am. I would probably stick with Company A because we have history. I know that company A has persistently given a good product and they're just trying to make it considerably better. I don't argue that B is at the same place, but because of my history with A, I would probably be a repeat purchaser. So now, let's assume, oh dear. Now we're at T4. And on these quality measures, organization B has really, it's just continued to get better and better and better. And organization A is still on this track of gradual improvement. So at T4, the quality of the product that the B organization makes is measurably better than A. The truth is, at that point, we would have to be irrational not to buy whatever copy the B organization is making. Same price, same features, much better quality. Again, we may not buy it for some reason, but my point is that would suggest that we are irrational actors. We're not making well-informed decisions. Now, just for the sake of conversation, let's assume that company B trends down. So now we're out here at T5. So we go farther out in time, and the progress that B has made starts to decline, and A catches up with them. So we're back at this point where there's no separation. Now, when I was sitting in a tiered classroom, I'm in 1104 right now, but I was doing it a couple of 100 miles from here. I was sitting in a tiered classroom, and this guy, Duran, had set the hook and reeled me in. He said, I'm not talking about companies, I'm talking about countries. The top organization is the United States of America, and the bottom line is Japan. And here's what he said. This is 1945. World War II has just ended. The United States has emerged as a dominant country in the world. We did not fight any war on American soil. We emerged with a strong industrial component. We were the victors in both theaters, both Europe and the Pacific. So we emerged in such a great position. So we have a significant industrial base, and we have 18 or 20 million servicemen returning. And these men and women are marrying, having families, buying Chevrolets, starter homes, washing machines, whatever else. So, because we were unscathed during World War II, there was no warfare fought on our soil. Japan, alternatively, was devastated. First of all, it's an island nation, which means it has almost no natural resources. It is densely populated. It was just defeated in a global war, and two of Japan's cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, were destroyed. We dropped atomic bombs there. So Japan is in a bad place, and we're in a good place. So my point is, if we as a nation are manufacturing stuff, our quality measure is going to be considerably higher. So now we go out here to roughly 1954. Japan has an organization, the acronym is MITI, it's Ministry of International Trade and Industry. This is an organization that's made up of folks from the government, their federal government, and industries. It's like a big council. And MITI in 1954 said, we, the people of Japan, the only way that we can get hard currency, cash, into our economy is to manufacture things and export them, sell them to other markets and other nations. And the only way we're going to do that is if our stuff is perceived as being high quality. So, in 1954, MITI, this council, Ministry of International Trade and Industry, made a decision to dramatically increase the quality metrics. So now I'm talking about the global auto industry, not just these two countries, and this would be 1973. That T3 is 1973. The reason that's significant is we had OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, largely Middle Eastern. At the time, Venezuela was not a member, Russia was not a member. I don't think New Jersey was, but I can't remember. But it was largely Middle Eastern countries who were hostile to the United States, who collectively and individually despise Israel. So Israel's in a 6-day war, they kick everybody's butt. I know that's not eloquent, but that's what happened. And we supported them. So OPEC said, okay, you want to support Israel? No more crude oil. So overnight, OPEC embargoed the United States. They stopped shipping all crude oil, the stuff that comes out of the ground, that was coming to the United States to be processed and distilled into petroleum products. Overnight, 40% of our feedstock went away, overnight. The morning after OPEC announced that, the price of a gallon of gasoline went up by a factor of 4. I want you to visualize this. If you're paying $2.50 for a gallon today, tomorrow it would be $10 a gallon. We also had to have rationing, and that went on for quite a while, months and months, because there wasn't enough crude oil to make all the distillates that come out of petroleum. We couldn't make diesel fuel, gasoline, jet fuel, because 40% of the feedstock wasn't coming to this country any longer. We were very much dependent on OPEC, on that cartel to provide us with petroleum. So this has enormous, unsurprisingly, this had enormous shocks in the United States. And in 1973, most American cars, there were some exceptions to this to be sure, but most American cars had large displacement V8 engines. Clearly, those are my people. But they had large displacement V8 engines that were not in any way economical. They were not, nobody was worried about being conscious about fuel consumption. I can remember many of us, I got my license in '64, so I've been driving for almost 10 years when this happened. Most of us had big block stuff. I owned a Oldsmobile 442. My friends had Chevys with 409s in them, 383 Dodges and Plymouths. We were all driving big displacement V8s, and we were getting 8 or 10 miles a gallon and loving it. Because when we dropped the hammer, it made loud noises and it got places fast. And we were stupid, just like you are, just in a different way in an earlier time. So, the American auto industry is only making large cars with large displacement, fuel inefficient V8 engines in them. And what are the Japanese doing? They're exporting Japanese cars to the United States. Not motorcycles, not the Honda Cub, but cars. And a lot of people said, oh my gosh, instead of 8 miles a gallon, let me buy one of these rice rockets and I'll get 25 miles a gallon. So many people made this fundamental shift in the early 70s away from American manufactured V8 powered cars into I'm not talking Euro stuff, but into Japanese cars that had small displacement 4-cylinder engines that got 25 miles a gallon. So you're looking at cutting your fuel consumption by a third. Instead of 8 miles a gallon, you're getting 25. That's an enormous savings, and it means you can go much farther distances. So the impetus, now here's something else that's important. I don't know where, I don't have a lot of board space. 1972, the total imports in the United States auto market was roughly 2.5%. That meant that 97.5% were American cars. 2.5% in 1972. And that's everything. That's not just Japanese, but that's also Europe, which at the time was the only other source of automobiles. So, T4 is 1988. And the reason that's significant is at T4, a lot of Japanese cars in use in the United States. The quality measures are continuing to improve. People have been driving them and thought, gosh, I bought this thing because it doesn't burn a lot of gas. Now I like it. So they became repeat purchasers of Japanese cars. And the American auto industry at the time, it was the big three, unsurprisingly, Chrysler, Ford, and General Motors. The big three essentially collectively were complacent. They thought, oh, people will get tired of them. They'll come back to us. Wrong. So in 1988, universally, all three of the big three in the United States said that we really need to respond to this competitive threat. So we, the US, our auto industry started making cars that were fuel efficient. We literally put aerodynamics in them. We took carburetors out and put fuel injection in there. We started making a lot of cars with 4- and 6-cylinder engines instead of big block, naturally aspirated V8s. So there was a fundamental shift, not just in fuel economy, but quality, because that's what we're talking about. So my point is that many Americans 50 years ago moved to Japanese cars because of the radical difference in fuel economy, but they realized that they were higher quality than American stuff because American manufacturers had grown complacent. They had 97.5% of the US market. Why would they work hard to compete? But Once people had seat time, once they had experience with the Japanese cars, they realized that their quality measures were considerably higher. And they thought, why would I go back? So, now, 1988, all three of the big American car manufacturers realized that they had fundamentally misread the market. And they started dramatically working on quality measures, much better cars, and also cars that were fuel efficient. So what happened is, let's say that this is maybe 10 years ago. Let's call this 2010. By 2010, there was convergence. There are data that prove this. There's no detectable difference between the quality on American cars and the quality on Japanese cars. I don't care if we're talking about Buicks or Lexi. There's no detectable difference in quality measures. American manufacturers have literally met the standard set by other global auto manufacturers. And now, if you choose a car, it will be for some other reason. It'll be preference, it'll be you like your local dealership and you know the techs who service it, or whatever the case may be. But this thing that Duran did, again, I thought he was just talking about two companies, like a Pepsi versus Coke scenario. He was talking about two nations across 75 years. 45 to present day. Pretty remarkable. So, if you look at how this played out, how did the Japanese get significant presence in the global market? They, as a nation, made a significant commitment to improving quality radically, not incrementally, not little creepy tiny measures, but radically. And now at this point, I don't have data for 2019. I normally buy the data for automobile sales in this country, but I don't have it yet for 2019. Surprisingly, it's not available in most formats until about the middle of the year. So right about now, right about June, I'll be able to buy the stuff for 2019. But in 2018, the three automobile manufacturers that are domestic to the U.S., Fiat, Chrysler, Ford, and General Motors, had roughly 54% of the U.S. market. So instead of having 97.5%, they're just barely scratching out half. That's telling. And the reason the U.S. manufacturers lost market share is other people beat us. They beat us on quality measures. Why would I ever buy a piece of junk? I don't want to buy something that's going to leave me on the side of the road. I want something that's going to give me long service. I want durability. I want reliability. Well, many of you do as well. So, quality is a competitive weapon. This lifted a nation of 350 million people out of a terrible place. They were defeated in the global war. They had an invading army occupy them. We, the United States, rewrote their structure of government. For the 900 years that preceded World War II, until we literally came in and created a government which is a form of democracy. Yes, they still have an emperor, but much like the Queen of England, that is a figurehead. The emperor has no role in running Japan as a nation. But for the 900 years that preceded World War II, the Japanese did not have any sort of a federal or centralized government. They had it was called bakafu. It was essentially feudal overlords. If I've got a gang of samurais and they're horseback mounted, let's assume I have 40. Those 40 people, those 40 samurai soldiers, in that era for 900 years, you were either samurai or peasant. You either lived with a katana in your hand or you lived with the point of the katana at your throat. But these tiny feudalistic things only represented a few square miles. So you'd go from warlord to warlord in terms of who controlled an area. And unsurprisingly, that's true in the Middle East right now. I just described Libya, Syria, a lot of places where these little fiefdoms that people put together and hold together simply at the point of a spear, or in contemporary terms, at the muzzle of a rifle. So quality as a competitive weapon lifted Japan as a nation state. And it made it one of the industrial powers of the globe. And it did it from roughly 1954 to 1988. In about a 35-year span, it went from worst in the world to best in the world. because it, the nation, MITI, the Ministry of Industrial Trade, International Trade and Industry, said to all of its members, we are going to obsess about quality. We're going to design things well, we're going to use good materials, we're going to obsess about manufacturing them well with no or few defects. Quality is a competitive weapon. Now, I'm done for today, except I do need to share with you the question, which is profoundly important, your attendance verification question. When you toggle in, please make sure that you tell me that you're responding to session 3, and of course you're going to tell me your name, your class, and your section. But the question today is, I need for you to tell me in your attendance verification precisely where the center of the universe is located. How easy is that? All right, love you. I'll be back on the net soon.